And we've got people joining us. Hello to Tiffany, Susan, Keith. Excellent. Thanks for joining us. Let us know where you're coming from. Let us know what company you work for. Just kind of say hello to us and to everyone else. And while you're doing that, we're going to have Tim Blakesley from USC Exec Ed kick us off.
Hey, Carrie, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone who has joined us today. I know, like me, you probably received dozens of these kinds of invites in these turbulent times. And we really appreciate you selecting to spend the time joining us. My name's Tim Blakesley. I am the Assistant Dean at USC Marshall School of Executive Ed. And it's my privilege to introduce both the CultureSync team and especially our adjunct professor, Ken Perlman, who is a consultant to Fortune 500 companies such as Levi Strauss & Company. His expertise is in organizational change, project management, but more specifically, this topic today, this whole idea of teams, but what to do in this enormous challenge that we've all faced with going virtual. So without taking any more of your time, I'm going to turn it over to Professor Perlman and our CultureSync team. Take it away, guys.
Great. Thank you. It is always good to be here in good company. It's great to see some familiar faces and names we recognize. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you guys from Executive Ed to make this happen. And thank you to the team at CultureSync for bringing our collective expertise in each of our areas to this mix. So what we're going to be doing is going through a number of concepts and research and tactics fairly quickly. So if the topic we're on does not interest you, just wait about 4 minutes because we'll move on to another one. So that'll be about the pace we run. We're running about a 5-minute clip to really go into a number of things at the appropriate level of depth to make it practical, tactical, and useful for you right now. The pictures on the screen are the CultureSync team. They're the voices you're going to be hearing. So this lets you have a preview of faces to names. Let's see. I'm obviously the guy with the glasses. But let me hand it over right now to Carolina Morgan, who's going to do our check-in for us.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to be here and hope you're all well and safe at home. Today, we're asking you to answer a question on our chat. And it's a very simple question, but a very complex topic. How effective is your team at working virtually? One word check-in.
So you can see it in the chat. Carrie asked the question. What's one word? How does this describe how they've been going? Go ahead, Carrie.
Tim says amazing. We've got some awesomes, very effective, developing, excellent, novice, good to great, periodic, enthusiastic, very nice, trying to improve, learning, better than average, developing, excellent, but we've been doing it for 20 plus years. You know, we noticed, oh, that's hard. I'm like, you know, while we've been doing it for 20 plus years, we've noticed that we've had to make some changes. So excellent. Ken, you want to bridge us over?
Yeah, so actually here, seeing that people are ranging from excellent to learning to adjusting, that's actually kind of a nice sample of what everyone is dealing with right now. Some are being a little bit more expressive in some of their frustrations and how it's difficult for them. So what we built the agenda around was knowing we were going to get a wide range of experiences. How do we provide something for everyone? So the agenda today, we're going to talk a little bit about what to expect, not just right now and not in the last couple of weeks, but what's coming, where to invest your time as an executive and as a manager, the phases you're going to go through, and how to lead your teams through those phases. We're also going to talk to you about some of the communication best practices that we've seen working with our clients. And we're also going to do it's listed here as up-leveling your emotional intelligence. This is really more, what should you be paying attention to with your team members as their needs are going to be changing? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then how do you notice when members of your team might be struggling a little bit, and what to do and how to intervene. As always, we'll keep the chats open, and we will have it as a conversation as well. So that's our agenda. Let's go on to the next one. Thank you very much. All right. So the chart you're seeing is called Rogers Law of Innovation Diffusion. So if you get nothing else from this session today, you can go to your friends and family and say, I am now deeply schooled in Rogers Law of Innovation Diffusion, and it will make you sound super smart. What this is actually, it's actually a fairly old model that keeps proving itself time and time again, which is not everyone adopts to change at the same time. Different people will move at different speeds. This explains why you have people who stand in line for a new iPhone, and why some people are still holding on to their iPhone 6, and some people, dare I say, hold on to a BlackBerry. So different people will grab onto different things at different times. And you might look at this and go, okay, but we've just been through something that moved everyone at about the same time, because we didn't really have a choice. And go, yeah, in many populations, yes, that happened. What's really interesting is we looked at the timeline that the states have declared shelter at home, and it actually follows this model. You had a handful of states that started back in March. You then saw another group that went late March. You then saw a spike in early April, and you still have 8 states that haven't done anything, or they've done it at the city level. So this curve, even though we've had a massive national, and in some cases global changes, people are still moving at different times. And the thing you're seeing your team members do is moving at different times. So people are all in on the tech, and it was easy, let's go. Hey, I'll try this new tool, let's try it out. Other people are like, do I really have to use Microsoft Teams? Why are you people on Slack? What is this Slack thing? So different people are experiencing this at different times. As a manager and as a leader, the key thing here is recognize that's natural. Not everyone goes at the same time. Different people at different phases need different interventions. More often what you need to do is, as people are moving slower, make it safer for them to come across. So demonstrate it, show them, share screen, make it easy, lower the risk for them to try it. At a certain point, you get to the social pressure. Like, are you still holding on to an iPhone 6? But we're not at that social pressure point yet. The other thing, the other way to move people towards the left of this chart is answering 3 simple questions. Why this? Why us? And why now? Why are we doing this? Why are we specifically doing it? Like, what does it matter to us? And why now? Now, the nice part is as we move to working from home, most of us know the answers to those three questions, and that's why it's moved pretty quickly. But where you see it not happening in some states, it's because the answers to those 3 questions are not as clear, or not made as clearly. So this is also one of those generational things where, we're seeing a lot of stress with parents of a certain age who are saying this is no big deal. Well, they're not bought into the why this, why us, why now. So that is a really fast version of Rogers Law of Innovation Diffusion. If you want more information, there's actually the book, The Tipping Point, goes into this. But what I'd like to do is turn this over to Carolina for our next poll.
I've got the poll.
Oh, Carrie,
so
for our
we're
next
going to
poll.
launch So we've got some great comments about, what the transition is like. We want you to think about, despite the fact that we were all forced into this working virtually very abruptly, how effective is your team at working virtually? How much are they adopting effective work? What we observed was the first week people were home, they were super excited. Our clients were like, yay, I get to work in my pajamas. And then the second week they were like, oh, wow, I should really get out of my pajamas and maybe not work in my bed, and maybe have a regular schedule and get some boundaries between work and home and figure out this whole situation. And then, you know, the third week, people are like, oh gosh, this is for real. I actually have to figure some stuff out. And now the reality of it is setting in. So our poll here today is, where is your organization in the Rogers Law curve around working virtually? So are they, you know, really into it and innovating, and are they early adopters? You know, maybe you guys were working from home 1 day a week or 4 days a week or entirely. Are they in the early majority where it was, you know, it was an easy setup? Are they in the late majority where, you know, I saw some comments. My 78-year-old dad signed up for Zoom and organized a virtual lunch with his lunch crew. Most of them were able to join. And so again, from Hart, now I know Hart's dad, he's a complete innovator. So like that doesn't surprise me. I think more of my parents who had never heard of Zoom. They live in a retirement community. They, my parents actually are, you know, kind of early adopters as well. They teach computer classes to the old people in their community, but they've never used Zoom. And all of a sudden they're doing, like, my aunties all got together and played Yahtzee on Zoom over the weekend. So, you know, just kind of figuring out, you know, like, now that the world's changing, people are, you know, adopting things that they wouldn't normally adopt. So your poll, I'm gonna, it looks like we've got about half of you have voted. A couple of votes are still coming in. I'll leave the poll open for a couple more seconds, maybe 14 more seconds here. And if you'd like to vote, it's very interesting, Ken. I cannot wait for you to see the results.
Well, just know the speed of voting has nothing to do with whether you're an innovator or a laggard. That's not correlated.
Well, you know, I'm noticing in the poll, we have some comments about people saying, well, what do I do when we're actually in the chasm, or we're sort of 50-50, or we're working in a really large organization? You know, there's a lot of variability in where you could be in this curve.
Yeah, and that's a great point, that people, like, the question was your organization, and oftentimes it also leads to the question of your team. Just know, as a leader, as a manager, when people are engaging in a change, it's personal. So as you message, the message has to be customized to the follower. So the why this, why us, why now, it has to be compelling to the recipient. So as Carrie says, she says things differently to her parents who are teaching other people how to use computers versus how I would share it with my father-in-law, who same age, very different experience. So we have to personalize our message to move them along this curve. And that takes energy and time. It also takes needing to know what's going to move that person, what's going to be compelling to that person. So your obligation as a manager is actually more complicated in this.
Well, so Ken, check it out. I love it when the research like matches the actual reality of experience, right? So look at that gorgeous bell curve. So what you're experiencing out there in the workplace is what Rogers Law says you will be experiencing. So it is helpful to know that you've got people who are going to adopt new ways of working really easily. It's going to be fun and energizing for them. And you're going to have people who are going to go kicking and screaming into this change and cannot wait to go back, and may just resist changing until they can't anymore. And you knowing that is going to be a very important part of leading your team.
Nicely done.
All right. And then what do you do about it? So while I'm just got to get this poll out of my way here. Okay, great. So while you have the understanding of people's ability and maybe tendency to adopt new ways of being and adopt change and adopt technology, this model, the J curve, is about adopting change. And so what we're going to look at is on the left axis, the y-axis, we're going to look at performance and then performance over time. So phase one of the J curve is before the change happened. If any of you can remember, somewhere around 4 weeks ago, for most of you. I think there were a lot of you on the West Coast. I'm in the middle of the country. Our change is happening much slower. But I know LA shut down pretty much 4 weeks ago is when our team stopped traveling. And at that time, you know, it was kind of business as usual, and a change is not going to happen unless there's a compelling reason for it. So in phase 1 of the J curve, this is when you're contemplating embarking on a change, and then the change is either made by you or by the leadership in your company, or the change is thrust upon you by COVID-19, like we've got Leslie talking about in the chat over there. You know, we have, the change has been thrust upon us, and we have jumped into the chasm. And we are now, we rapidly entered phase 2 of the J curve. This is where you see an immediate drop in performance. Now, most of us probably expected an immediate drop in performance as we were sending our workforce home, or as we were going home and our kids were all there. And, you know, you've got to homeschool them, and then our significant others are home. Maybe we're working at home with our parents. There are a lot of different situations where we just knew people don't necessarily have the technology or the experience with the technology in order to work effectively at home. Some people will feel fearful, like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do my job. I can't do my job effectively. Some people will feel angry. You know, and that fear and anger, it may be directed toward work. It may be directed toward, you know, their TV during, you know, presidential speeches. It may be directed toward family and loved ones, but there's just general sense of shock and less effectiveness. What you can do during this phase is listen. There will be a lot of complaining. And generally, we're not big proponents of tolerating a lot of complaining. But in phase 2 of the J curve, listening to people's complaints is very important. I know for our team and for our clients, the thing we're noticing more is that we're having more one-on-one and team calls and more connection than ever before. My clients, as recently as this morning, have been complaining about the pace of work, despite the fact that work has changed. I just noticed, okay, despite the fact that work has changed and that we're working from home, we're not commuting, maybe we have extra time in our day, we're finding people are working 12-hour days, 15-hour days. And part of that is because there aren't great boundaries between work and home, but part of that is because there's this new need to stay connected and do all these extra one-on-ones and caretaking of our team. Our leaders are intuitively and naturally listening. This is what you need to do in phase 2. We need to listen to people's complaints, because oftentimes a complaint is just a request in disguise, and their complaint says, hey, I need better technology, or my internet's not working and I need help figuring out how to do this. I don't have a monitor that I can work at. My ergonomics aren't great. My schedule's not great. I mean, like, we're really good at working from home. Hart mentioned, you know, we've been doing this for 20 years. I had to block out family time with my team yesterday because it's something that I was able to navigate very comfortably and easily before, and that I have not been able to comfortably and easily navigate in the last 2, 3, 4 weeks. And it's getting, it got to the point where I was like, wow, I need to actually put that in my calendar. Otherwise, it continues to stress me out that I am blocking, that I'm getting booked during that time. And I just need a little bit of time to connect with my family, have dinner with them, get them all sorted out, you know, decompress myself before I jump back into work or shift into a different mode. In phase 3 of the J curve, this is when you start seeing performance improve. So, you know, it bottoms out. We tell you, don't call the bottom, that's bad luck. Maybe only Hart could call the bottom today because she's feeling lucky. So, but don't call the bottom. But what people will start feeling, and maybe you're seeing a little bit of this on your teams, is maybe they'll start feeling hopeful. We posted an article. It was, you know, some graphs and representations. It was some data that projected trends around how long things are going to be shut down. And Carolina said, you know, it's great to see that there is an end in sight. Like, okay, I can feel hopeful again. And so, and as people start seeing, okay, I can be productive. I understand. When we got on the call, somebody, I think it was Ken, was navigating his personal situation with his family. And he said, hey, listen, the dog can't stay locked in the office with me for an hour, right? Like we have figured out how to navigate our situations a little more effectively. And people are like, okay, this is working. I'm starting to see productivity increase. But some people still feel angry and resentful. They're like, I don't like being home. I don't like working from home, or the way this is isn't working for me. I'm fearful. And despite the fact that we're improving, they're still complaining. In phase 3, this is the place to tolerate less complaints. The only kinds of complaints to tolerate are ones that lead to change and results, and like, hey, there's a complaint because we need to debug something or we need to fix something. But typically in phase 3, what you want to do is incentivize people. And when I say incentivize people, the feedback we get all the time, we get pushback on incentivization all the time. It's like, I don't have any money. I can't give people bonuses. I can't give people raises. I can't give people new titles. People work for your praise. People work for your pleasure. One of the best incentives you can give people is a compliment or an acknowledgement or a thank you. And so these are the kinds of incentives that you can start giving out, is acknowledgements, thank yous, and also just like saying, hey, I saw you did, there are different kinds of incentives. Like you can say, hey, listen, let's have a virtual happy hour on Friday. Let's have a virtual coffee break. Let's get some more one-on-one time between the two of us. These are the kinds of things that make people feel valued and are very useful in phase 3 of the J curve. Phase 4 is when we've adopted it and we're getting performance better than we were getting before we left, before we embarked on the new change. And in phase 4, people will feel optimistic and celebratory, which you'd expect. Okay, we're really good at this. We rock this. We're completely awesome. And some people will feel resentful. Like in phase 3, maybe there's some anger and resentment. They'll say, hey, we did all of this. We made all of this change, and this isn't what I signed up for. This is not how I want to do work. This is not the kind of company I want to work for. This is not the kind of work experience I want to have. This is not how I want my life to look. And I didn't have any choice in it. And people will opt out in different places. So we're going to send you into some breakouts so you can have a short conversation. Welcome back from breakouts. We hope you've had some great conversations. And feel free to jump into the chat and let us know what you learned. Like, where's your team? What did you get any ideas? Did you get any new ideas in the breakout?
And it looks like people are still coming in.
Yep, great. Thank you, Hart. Yeah, it looks like we've still got plenty of people in the breakout. They're having a great conversation. It's amazing. Love to see the engagement in the breakouts. And it looks like we are back. Does that sound right? Yeah, looks like we're back. Everybody's back. So welcome back. Yeah, so people have gotten some new ideas, listening and making more frequent check-ins. And, the flip side of that is when you're listening and making more frequent check-ins, if you're an extrovert like Jody, who was in the main room with us, that's probably energizing for you. If you're more introverted, or have a different social style or a different leadership style, that could be actually draining for you. So if you know that those frequent check-ins are draining for you, schedule some rejuvenation time. I know for me, I had a vacation scheduled. I bet some of you had vacations scheduled sometime in the last 4 weeks that have gotten canceled or rescheduled. And instead of going on vacation, I worked 60 hours that week. And so I just had this observation. I'm like, wow, I really need some time off. So I blocked myself out for a couple of days. And because I know that I need some rejuvenation time. And I'm going to go out and work in my garden and, play outside is kind of, in a safe way, far, far away from all the other people. So, excellent. I think we are ready to move on to communication best practices.
Yeah, and this is actually a great thing to bring up, just reading the chat already. Jeremy said that Zoom, Blackboard, Teams isn't fitting all. And one thing that we have now that they didn't have, let's say in 1918, was this incredible explosion of different ways to communicate. So we have video, and video can mean Zoom. Video can mean, we were using Google Hangout the other day. There's a whole bunch of FaceTime, which is a grandparent favorite. We have phone calls, right? We all have our phones. We have, here we put Slack, but there are, Teams also has a similar feature. There's text, there's email, calendar invites, Google Docs. My kids are being homeschooled and they literally have 5 different apps each. So that said, how do you know when to use what, right? And it's a little confusing, and it's actually something that we are really recommending to come to an agreement and have an explicit conversation of what to use when. So we have set up, actually, I think Carrie, a client, had initially set up a chart like this, which inspired us to put this in an actual graph. But we as a team have decided what are the best ways for us to communicate with each other. So we use video. In our case, we tend to use Zoom for team meetings when we're teaching something like this, a training. We actually try to do video when we're doing one-on-ones, which wasn't always true before the crisis hit. But especially now, as leaders wanting to be as in touch with your people as possible, seeing the nonverbals in video can be really, really helpful. For us, we tend to have them scheduled, although sometimes if it's just a call, we'll make it impromptu. And as far as prioritization, if something is booked on our team for a Zoom meeting, that means, okay, that's it, we gotta be there, right? That's how important it is. So the idea is with your team, you're gonna sit down and look at how do you wanna handle these things. On our team, calls are great for one-on-ones. I was laughing with the team because we sort of added the word ultra urgent. We tend not to call each other unless it's scheduled in our calendar. So I know if Carrie or Ken or Carolina or Jack, if one of them is calling me, oh boy, it's important, right? It's unusual, it's probably urgent. Now, if it's my mother calling, maybe not so urgent, right? But knowing how are you going to handle phone calls on your team? Slack is something that we use for the informal chat, connect. If there's an action required, we do not use Slack to communicate that. That doesn't mean your team can't. The question is, what's your agreement on your team? How often do you want to use it? Text for us is urgent. For fun, we started texting each other recipes and realized that maybe wasn't urgent, so we flipped it over to Slack. Email is a great place for detailed information. We use our calendar invites also as a communication tool. One thing that's really important to notice, if you have access to a colleague's calendar and you are booking time on your colleague's calendar, pay attention to what their day looks like, right? If you're looking at their day and you realize they literally don't have time for lunch, maybe try and schedule it for another day. Try and make it a half hour. Is it possible to make an email? Being really cognizant and thoughtful when you have access to someone else's calendar, what impact are you having on that? And finally, we also use Google Docs as a great way to collaborate, but we usually balance it out with other things. So for example, if you want collaboration on a Google Doc, we usually do a follow-up email, right? And if it's really urgent, maybe a follow-up Slack or text. But the key here is that last category, the agreements. Make your agreements with your team. Make the plan together. And let people know when things are due. That's something that is easy to forget, and we don't have the same casual walk down the hall as we normally do. So I'm noticing in the chat, Rachel said we're able to engage by, oh, it's moving fast. By a cell platform. Seeing Doodle is really popular. If anyone else wants to post anything in the chat that they've found to be really, really useful.
Hey, Hart.
Yeah.
Jeremy brought up a really good point in wondering if we were going to talk about security at all. And I know that's been in the news with Zoom. Happy to pass it over to you. Happy to give some thoughts. Okay. What we're finding with our clients is they're each making their own decisions. So some have said, you know, we're moving off of Zoom until they get their security concerns worked out. We've decided to keep going with Zoom because if people find these videos from us, that's great. So we're a little more open source, but it's definitely one of those things that you need to be paying attention to, and chances are your organization is paying attention to it. So USC, as soon as we heard that there were instances of Zoom bombing, has made meeting passwords required by default. So there's been a response to it. I think this is one of those rapidly evolving situations. And Jeremy, you gave us a BBC article. We'll take a look at that and share that out after we have a chance to review it. But this is definitely yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Oh, yeah, I can just add a couple of things. So I am working with a team at USC that does deal with very secure information, and they went home before all the rest of us did. They immediately got on a VPN. And so a virtual private network is something that your team may already be on, may need to be using, especially if you're in healthcare or if you're in banking, or if you're transmitting any particular kind of information. That may be something that you need to be looking at, is working with a virtual private network. And then another, so we did a workshop with Wells Fargo Bank a few weeks ago. And their security, you know, because they're dealing with sensitive banking information, while we weren't doing banking at the time, they are not allowed to use video at all. That's actually an internal rule, is there's no video for team communication. So they're allowed, they use Skype for Business, and they can use Skype to share slides and to chat, but they cannot do video because of security issues. So just know that, you know, your particular situation is going to have its own very specific security needs, and to make sure you're looking at that.
Awesome.
All right.
I'll take it back. So this next part, you know, if you had asked me 6 months ago that I would be talking about psychological stress and kind of some mental health stuff, I would have said, yeah, that's great. My father's a surgeon who got his training during Vietnam. Like, you tape it up and play, and if you don't show up, then someone else has to fill your spot. So you show up. And so now what's changed is I did a check-in with my students and my clients, which was simply the question, how are you doing today? And I let them write a response. So with the students, I did a Google Doc. With my clients, I sent them an email, but I let them just write. And what I saw was pretty remarkable. Over half the respondents were, I'm doing fine, I'm doing great. You know, this working from home thing is fantastic. Been asking for this for months. You know, the responses were really good and positive and healthy on half. About 20% had what I would call generalized anxiety, like I'm worried about the economy, I'm worried about the health system, or more, you know, just generalized. Then about the other 30 to 40% was what we would call in psychology specific anxiety. My uncle is in ICU. My husband got laid off. My partner's internship was just canceled. They were very specific stressors and concerns. And we then mapped that against the COVID timeline for the different geographies that our clients and students are in, and said, okay, if this is the beginning, we're 3-4 weeks in, we've not hit plateau or peak, the number of people who are going to see people who have lost jobs will go up. The number of people who are seeing furloughs or pay cuts or other financial challenges will go up. The amount of news coverage will go up, if that's possible at all. More importantly, people who are connected to or affected by the virus directly will go up. So just putting the situation and the stressors to the mathematics of it, it said, hang on a second, this is actually a big deal. And so what we started to do is say, look, managers are in a unique position in that other than the family we are sequestered with, we are probably talking to our colleagues and coworkers more than anybody else. And as managers and supervisors, we actually have a pretty interesting lens on people, which is their camera, so we can see them up close and personal now. But we're also not connected to them all the time, so we can start to see trends. You know, we can see shifts that took a little bit of time, but actually, hang on a second, they're more stark. So we actually think this is, these are important things to pay attention to as managers, because you have that ability to be interacting with them in a different way. So just how do you do that? Number one, as you would in an in-person meeting, ask people to show up, like turn your cameras on, turn your mic on, because you wouldn't come into a meeting like with your invisibility cloak or your like mouth covered. You know, it's like, have people show up to the meeting as they would show up to a meeting. The camera lets you see their physical environment, lets you see their facial expression, it lets you know when they're single tasking and multitasking. It gives you that visible response, because the easiest place to hide in plain sight is camera off, mic muted. So turn your cameras on. Pay attention to what you're seeing. You know, the first time we did a call with people on this call, you know, a couple people, they were like in the middle of physically moving to new apartments, and you could see that in their background. You see them today, and their environment is much more engineered and designed, and you can tell they've changed their physical space. So that's a clear indication that progress is being made. A lot of people are doing one-on-ones, which is great. What we recommend you do is track them. Keep notes. What have you talked about? When you said, how are you doing? What was their response? Keep a little score of their mood. Like, how's their mood? Oh, between 1 to 10, today it felt like an 8. And just watch for when the 8s become 10s or when the 8s become 4s. But have that kind of tracking over time, so you can see when new things are popping up and when things are getting resolved, or if they're not getting resolved, and what their mood is like.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just say, and I want to interject, there's how are you? And everyone's reflexive action is, I'm fine. The follow-up question is, and how are you really?
Mm-hmm.
Hart is an expert at that. I never get away with saying I'm fine.
Yeah, Hart is like Hart is like our expert in this, because the other thing she does is she asks questions. How are you? Waits. How are you really? Waits. And then she's really listening. Like, you sounded differently than you did yesterday. What do you attribute that to? You sound really up today. Why is that? She's really good at paying attention at multiple levels, not just the content, but how it's said. Mm-hmm. And then politely asking, why is that? And not in a justify it, but a help me understand. And it's that tone, it's that space, it's that using silence to her advantage, where, as Caroline says, she doesn't let you get away with not answering it. And then the other part is notice when someone is not there. Like noticing absence and tardies, and when they're kind of there, like they're there, but they're not there. Like you notice that, especially with cameras on, mics on. And then the other, that's the one level. The other, and we've talked about these. If people are talking all the time now, frantic communication, hey, heads up. If they're not handling anxiety in their normal way, any kind of behavior change. Like, Ken, you haven't worn anything USC in like 2 weeks. What's going on? That would definitely be a trigger for my team.
Yeah, I was like, I haven't seen you out of your USC gear for more than one day, and it was because everything was in the wash.
Yeah, there you go. So it's just noticing those things and keeping track of them, because we are so physically disconnected that these are the signs of someone doing well and not doing well. And it's hard, it's easy to fake it at an instant. It is hard to fake it over time, especially when someone is paying attention.
I do want to chime in on the personality and behavior shifts, and we discussed this as a team. We are all under tremendous stress right now. And for anyone here that's familiar with the Hogan assessment, one of the ways they look at personality is, this is how you show up on a good day. Everything's going well. In my case, I got paper towels this morning. It's a really good day. Hopefully I'm showing up as my best self. And so we often show up, different aspects of our personality show up when we're under stress. Stress can include boredom, it can include uncertainty, and I think we can all agree that everyone is under a level of stress right now. And so you may see some people doubling down on some behaviors and some things that might attribute to the personality, or you might see them suddenly feel like they're a different person, which might be because they behave differently under stress. So both cutting everyone sort of the space and acknowledgement that we're under stress, and checking in on, hey, I noticed this is a little different. Have you noticed it in terms of those behavioral shifts? And sometimes, quite frankly, those are really working for people. We have a client where we have a leader that everyone thought would be this amazing leader in a time of crisis who has disengaged completely, whereas someone else in that organization has really stepped up and taken the reins, and we've repeatedly heard, wow, who knew this guy? Right? Because under stress, he's blossoming. So just notice where you are and where the people around you are, and how it's working for them and yourself.
Fantastic. Awesome. Great example.
Nice.
Let's go to the next one, which is, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, as we move to the next slide, I was going to ask Carolina if she could share a little bit about her experience in, before Carolina worked with us, she worked in a very large organization and had a real experience of not just spotting psychological distress, but then having to take action on it. And I was hoping she could tell you that story as we look at that next slide.
Yes, that was a good story. I have to say that, we were 2,000 employees under a great deal of internal struggle and external pressures from all kinds of political and financial matters. So we spotted psychological stress very, very often on ourselves as well as others. So the trick was really truly to be very good listener, and unlike one of our very capable colleagues who couldn't be here, Lindsay, we're not counselors, but our organizational development gives us some frameworks to work on resilience. So what comes to mind is the work of Adam Grant on resilience that we often would talk about in the organization, and that's sort of the 3 Ps. The issue of permanence, nothing lasts forever, is something that we tell ourselves when we're trying to build resilience. The other piece, the whole personalization, it's not my fault, wasn't my bat, it wasn't my market. So, and then in things like his pervasiveness is his last P, which is, if you compartmentalize this issue, you have the ability to look and gain perspective and see that there's other aspects of your life that are going well. And this is something that we had to do on a regular basis, gaining that perspective of, maybe this one thing is not going well, and this is where the stress is being focused, but let's look at the big picture and other things that are working. Like in this case, we are healthy, and most of us are employed, and we have loved ones, and there's a lot to be thankful for. Is that what you were hoping for, Karen?
Yeah, that's great. Excellent. And then if you can get us to the next slide as well for Ken. Thank you.
So, and here's the important distinction, and Carolina touched on it. We are not expecting managers to be mental health professionals. Not only are they not equipped for it, we don't want it, and we have actively trained them not to be that for decades. So we don't expect it to happen. What we do expect and what we do need is managers to have a set of triage skills. And triage is simply knowing who needs help and what type of help, and getting that help connected to the person who needs it. Most of you people won't need anything that you can't provide. Most. There are some that may. And so these are our suggestions, and they are very tactical. Number one, know what your organization has in its toolkit. What's in the EAP? What's part of the benefit package? What is available on demand from HR, from the in-house HR team? So just being aware of that gives you a set of tools that you can go, oh, okay, our HR team has a really good connection to this. So for us as professors, USC Student Mental Health has really upped their game in the last month and is doing a lot of things. USC, recognizing that students would be under financial pressure, has changed the rules on financial considerations. And so they sent out a whole series of, here are the contacts for people who need different types of financial help. If it's about tuition, this, housing, this, food and clothing, this. So just knowing what is in the repertoire lets you know who can back you up. Exercise flexibility on deadlines. If you had a standing meeting at 8 a.m. every day, now that some of your people who are home with no childcare and no school to send their kids to, 8 a.m. may not work for them. So start to be flexible on that. That's part of J-curving. Provide additional resources where needed. It's like, look, you were doing a lot of work beforehand. We've moved to virtual. It freed up a couple people. We're going to get you, a little bit of help from the support team that Jody was talking about. We've got a great support team here at Marshall. So, shifting some resources around on priorities is great. Set clear expectations. Define what good looks like. Know what people are going towards. Make sure everyone is clear about what the goal is. And then you're basically set, and just, communicate and escalate as needed. It's very tactical, but that's the level of intervention we know we need managers to do. So with that, let me hand it over to Carolina to talk about our learning resource.
Yeah, so everyone will receive a copy of the slides as well as a document that contains some additional resources for you to indulge in. If you prefer to read, and that's a really great learning method for you, there are some articles that expand upon the themes that we touched upon today, and maybe also give you some other ideas and some other suggestions. We also have some videos and podcasts so you can listen to on this particular topic. There's so much out there that we just wanted to make sure we curated some things. We also thought about some exercises, some activities that you could do to practice some of these skills that we talked about today, and then some thoughts to reflect on and to sort of assess where you're at. You're welcome to use them all. And if you think of anything else or would like to improve upon it or add to it, feel free to contact us. We'll be happy to have that conversation.
Excellent. I'm just making a comment. There are a lot of comments about EAP's employee assistance programs in the chat. And if you work for a large organization like Leslie and like Jody and, there's somebody here from the Navy, some of these large organizations have very, very well thought out and well-designed EAPs. And if you work for a smaller organization, they may not. And so we've got a lot of smaller organizations that are reaching out. Individuals are reaching out and getting coaching, they're getting counseling, they're getting support, and just putting together some additional packages. We saw somebody was talking about sharing PTO and other creative ideas. So, just keep in touch with each other, keep having this conversation, and look at the new resources and let us know. We're here for the next 5 minutes or so. We are going to officially end the class, so you have a 5-minute passing period before your next meeting, so you can take a quick bio break. We want to remind you of an upcoming webinar that Tim Blakesley is leading. That is on April 15th from 12 to 1, Maintaining Performance Engagement. Tim, do you want to do a little shout out for that course real quick?
Yeah, thank you, Carrie, so much. This one really is another double click on the topic today. So today was about leading remote teams. This one will be, how do I continue doing performance management if I'm a people leader? It is unfortunate. Many of us, there are many people laid off, furloughs. For those of us that have organizations that are either first responders or still engaged in doing our business, you know, how do I still maintaining performance management? So we'll dive into, for people leaders, whether you're a new people leader or whether you're a seasoned people leader, we'll be looking at some of the fundamentals and how they apply in this time of crisis.
Excellent.
So,
Thanks, Tim. And, you know, absolutely stay in touch with us. We're here to answer questions. You can post questions in the chat. You can open your mic and ask questions. And if you are interested in more courses, the last slide here has more courses from USC Exec Ed. And you can also reach out to CultureSync for a little more support. So we're here to help. And it has been our pleasure to hang out with you today. Any last parting words from the team?
stay healthy, stay home, and fight on.
There you go.